Greetings, YouTube. Today I'd like to talk about names. Now, everyone on YouTube has a nickname, and I imagine that most of them have very little to do with your actual legal name. And in fact, if I were to look through all of my subscribers, 549 I think as of this morning, I would be surprised if any of them bore any resemblance to the actual names that people bear on their birth certificates. And that's okay, because there are names that we were given and there are names that we choose for ourselves. Sometimes a nickname, sometimes it's a term of affection, and sometimes it's a deliberate act, a name you pick for when you're playing World of Warcraft or some other massive multiplayer role-playing game or whatever it's called. But there are other times people choose names. I used to be active in the Society for Creative Anachronism. I was very active. I was one of the officers here in the state of New Hampshire, and I was the PR guy for over 3 years. And everyone in the SCA has a name that they've chosen for themselves, and they register it with the Heralds. And if no one else is using it, you officially become that person within the society. And the name is chosen to fit a particular era and nation of origin. Mine, I picked 14th century Welsh, though it's very English in many regards, which isn't all that uncommon because Wales is right next to England. But you had all kinds of people using all kinds of names. The organization, the SCA, covers from 600 to 1600, and we had some people that dipped considerably earlier than 600. We had some people that were doing Celtic, or even, I think we had at least one person that was doing Greek, and that was okay. Ajax was alright. And I got used to using the names that the people in the society had chosen for themselves. I knew hundreds of people, none of whom I knew any of their legal names. A good friend of mine, who unfortunately we lost to leukemia, went by the name of Sir Count Elfwine Dundane. I couldn't remember what his title was. And Elfwine is the name I used all the time. It's just what I used. I never thought of ever asking what his legal name was. I'd met him, he was Elfwine, and that's all I ever used. His wife called him Elfwine. His kids called him Dad. But one day I learned that his first name was Nick. And I was like, Nick? Because if there was one name in the world this guy didn't look like, it was a Nick. If I remember, I'll post a picture of him someday. He was a fascinating gent. He was one of the brightest people I've ever known, one of the handiest people I've ever known. Great person to have around, and I'm sorry we lost him. But I just got used to that. Now, all of you have chosen names for yourselves for different reasons. I chose Tetsubo. It's my favorite Japanese weapon. The 57 tacked on was, I think, because when I originally logged in on some site, it might even been Hotmail or Yahoo or something, there already was a Tetsubo, so I tacked that on because 57 is my favorite number. And I just kind of, it migrated over to YouTube when I became a member. But what names did you pick for yourself, and why did you pick them? I know a number of people I know, some of my subscribers, people I've encountered online, have told me why they picked their particular names. But I'm interested in knowing, of my subscribers, why did you pick the name you have? Was it just something you thought of at the spur of the moment? Was it something you dwelt on? Did you consider it? Or was it something that someone gave to you as a nickname? It was bequeathed to you from a friend. I'm hoping they were a friend, especially if you're using it now on YouTube. I also find it fascinating that sometimes you find people using alternative aliases. And it's not just enough to present myself. I'm using Tetsubo here, but everything I'm telling you is who I am. Now, I haven't told you everything about my life. I probably never will tell you everything about my life. But everything I have told you is me. Warts and all. Yeah, I even got a wart right there. And that's what I like to do. I like to be open and honest about it. Pretty much everything. There are times when I'm not, and usually I have very good reasons. But here, on my channel, I pretty much say what I want to say. But I know that there are people here on YouTube that have more than one identity. They use one YouTube channel for one part of their life, and they use another YouTube channel for another part of their life. And I've always found that fascinating. And sometimes I understand, for example, someone who has a technical channel, because they're talking about computers, and they have a personal vlogging channel. That makes perfect sense. And some people do it because of completely different interests. You know, you could have someone who's an otaku into anime and manga, and someone, and then the other part of the time, they want to talk about poetry. So there may not be a lot of overlap between these two things. But sometimes I've seen people do it because they want to present themselves as different people. And that's fascinating. That I find interesting. I've encountered someone like that just recently, and in some ways I would love to ask why they chose to do what they did. But probably not going to happen anytime soon, if at all. So, do you have more than one channel? Do you present yourself in completely different ways if you do? And if you do have more than one channel, why do you have more than one channel? What do you think that you can't do on one channel that you feel comfortable to do on another? So, those are the questions today, folks. Why do you have the nickname you have? And do you have more than one channel? And then why do you have more than one channel?